Los Angeles, California, September 14, 1997, 8:03 p.m. The chandeliers of the Shrine Auditorium glittered like shattered constellations above a sea of tuxedos and sequined evening gowns. The 49th Primetime Emmy Awards were poised halfway between Hollywood glamour and late-night nerves. Every table brimmed with manicured smiles, trembling champagne flutes, and the faint static of television history about to be written. To Ethan Cole, the swirl of light felt almost radioactive. The 38-year-old documentary filmmaker, dressed in a charcoal Zegna dinner jacket that cost more than his first car, was trying to stay focused on the presenter's words, but his pulse kept sinking with the lens glare bouncing off 1,000 camera rigs. Then it happened, and the Emmy for Outstanding Informational Special goes to Distant Thunder, Children of the Khmer Plain. Ethan Cole, producer. For a breath Ethan didn't move. The applause rolled over him like surf, only when his partner, forensic anthropologist Dr. Naomi Hernandez, dug her nails lovingly into his wrist did he stand. On the way to the stage he caught the ghost of his reflection in a Steadicam monitor, short brown hair tamed with pomade, a thin scar by the left temple, and eyes the color of a deep water well that had seen too much suffering to sparkle easily. His speech lasted 91 seconds, just long enough to thank Naomi, the survivors in Cambodia who had trusted him, and the tiny public broadcast station in Portland that first aired his work. Back at the table he exhaled a long, private victory sigh. Naomi kissed him on the cheek. "You did it," she whispered. Ethan smiled, but his gaze drifted to the far exit where a red LED sign blinked stage door. A dozen feet beyond that door waited the next story. The next war zone. The next set of children whose nightmares needed daylight. He had already heard the faint rumble of that call in a Nightline segment 3 weeks earlier, footage of skeletal toddlers in Sierra Leone mining pits. Distant Thunder was barely wrapped when his moral accelerator pressed itself to the floor again. He would go. He always went. Blank. Blank. Cascade Hills, Washington, May 19, 1998, 6:12 a.m. 8 months later, dawn crept over the densely forested foothills east of Seattle, tinting low clouds the color of bruised lilac. A yellow school bus hissed past mile marker 42 on Highway 202. Its tires firing gravel like birdshot. 2 switchbacks higher, on Ridgecrest Lane, Ethan Cole's newly rented Craftsman cabin sat in the hush of a cedar grove, smoke rising from its stone chimney. He hadn't meant to return to American soil so soon, much less to a place this quiet. But Naomi had landed a year-long fellowship at the University of Washington to build a forensic DNA lab for unidentified cold case remains. Ethan, a man who normally lived out of Pelican cases and airport lockers, decided to turn the cabin into a temporary editing suite. He would cut his Africa footage there, detox from malaria meds, maybe even learn how to breathe between outrages. What he did not know, as he sipped French press coffee on the porch and watched a pileated woodpecker assault a rotten stump, was that a man named Warren Talbot was already awake on the adjoining parcel, 3 acres of raw land that wrapped around Ethan's property like a crooked elbow. Talbot, 57, was a retired petroleum geologist from Houston with callous thick hands and opinions just as rough. He'd arrived in Cascade Hills 2 years prior, hauling behind him a $120 Super C motorcoach and a dream of building the perfect off-grid fortress. Locals called him the driller, half in jest, half in dread, because he spent most days boring 20-foot holes to test bedrock density where he planned to pour a foundation. The work was loud, augers shrieked, diesel generators growled, and the concussion of Talbot's frustrations ricocheted through the quiet valley every time a drill bit snapped on hidden quartz. Ethan first met him the afternoon the Emmy statuette arrived via FedEx. He had set the golden-winged figure on the porch railing when Talbot's F-250 rattled up the shared gravel drive. The older man killed the engine but left the radio blasting a talk radio monologue about coastal elites. He climbed out, wiped drilling mud on faded Wranglers, and nodded at the trophy. "Huh," Talbot said, "fancy paperweight." Ethan offered a polite smile. "Something like that. You're the TV fella? Documentaries. Yeah, must be nice. Talk about things. Never fix 'em." Talbot spit a ribbon of chaw onto the ferns. "Listen, Your driveway cuts 4 feet onto my survey line. Need it gone by summer. County's rules, not mine. Ethan's brow furrowed. The cabin's deed showed a clear easement dating back to 1961. Pretty sure it's grandfathered. Talbot's phone rang. He raised a single finger, hold that thought, and started barking orders to a subcontractor about more concrete mix. Without another word he climbed back into the Ford, slammed the door, and fishtail-ed down the track, leaving Ethan in a fog of diesel and dust. The ice was set. Over the next 6 weeks the tension metastasized. At dawn Talbot's machinery roared. At midnight Ethan's editing monitors glowed blue through the fir trees. Angering Talbot's wife, Darla, who complained the light attracted moths. A pair of boundary survey flags vanished, replaced by a cardboard sign scrawled, "Private road, trespassers will be prosecuted." Ethan found tire ruts aimed deliberately at his drainage ditch. In return he began logging every instance, date, time, decibel level, creating a paper trail he intended to hand the county peace officer if needed. Naomi, who drove up from Seattle on weekends, tried to broker civility. She baked prickly pear jam scones, carried them next door with a nervous smile, and returned 10 minutes later empty-handed and unsettled. Talbot had accepted the pastries but refused to uncross his arms. "Your boyfriend thinks rules don't apply to him," he muttered, "but the mountain has a way of setting things straight. Blank. Underscore. Blank. Seattle, Washington, June 2, 1998, 2:45 p.m. Detective Sergeant Caleb Rourke sat in the fluorescent hum of the Violent Crimes bullpen, sorting through a backlog of missing persons faxes. He was 46 with a shaved scalp, nicotine gums, and a talent for linking unrelated horrors by instinct. That afternoon a coroner's liaison had handed him a puzzling phone message. Anonymous caller claims a body is buried off Ridgecrest Lane, Cascade Hills. Check old quarry pit. Rourke punched the coordinates into MapQuest, noted the property belonged to one Warren Talbot, and added the scrap of paper to a thin file marked unidentified female, case 98-710. With resources stretched after the Tacoma arson spree, he doubted he'd reach Cascade Hills soon. Still, he circled June 14 on his desk calendar, a Saturday when patrol deputies could meet him there without overtime squawks from the brass. Blank. Underscore. Blank. Cascade Hills, June 10, 1998, 9:17 p.m. The mountain coughed thunder. A pre-monsoon storm lunged across the Cascades, blitzing the valley with horizontal rain and slashing wind. Ethan killed the cabin lights to grade night vision scenes on his Avid console, outside. Talbot's generator hammered shotgun loud against the howl of weather. Just after 10, power in the entire basin flickered, died, returned in a stuttering heartbeat. Then, a single gunshot. Ethan jerked upright. The sound came not from Talbot's land but farther downslope near the abandoned basalt quarry. Half a mile of muddy switchbacks away. He pulled on waterproof boots, grabbed a tactical flashlight, and stepped into the squall. At the quarry lip, rain-fogged beams of his flashlight slid across overturned pallets, rust-brown puddles, and an excavator skeleton. He found no footprints. The storm's anger erased everything, yet a different clue prickled at his nostrils: gasoline. Fresh. He knelt by a stack of blue tarps pinned under a wheelbarrow. Beneath one tarp, something pale glimmered like moonlit marble, the edge of a human foot. Lightning shredded the sky. Ethan staggered back, breath trapped in his throat, a scream drowned by thunder. He fumbled for his Motorola flip phone, no signal. He hurled himself down the track toward the main road, mind racing through triage protocols. But a pair of headlights floated up toward him. He waved both arms. The truck slowed. It was Talbot's Ford. The window buzzed halfway. Talbot's leer glowed in the dash light. "You're out late, Emmy." Ethan's voice cracked. "Call 911. There's someone dead in the quarry." Rain hammered the roof of the pickup. Talbot stared, unblinking, then shifted into reverse. The tires spit gravel. The truck vanished, tail lights bleeding red among cedar trunks. Ethan stood alone in the tempest, realization drilling icy holes through his resolve. Warren Talbot either already knew about the body, or had placed it there himself. Blank. Underscore. Blank. Seattle, June 11, 1998, 7:08 a.m. Detective Rourke's pager beeped twice as he bit into a stale maple bar. Snohomish County Dispatch, single gunshot heard overnight. Possible 187. Ridgecrest Lane. Deputies requesting homicide consult. Rourke grabbed his coat, tossed the pastry, and hustled for the motor pool. He had no idea that by nightfall the story would rip open every cable news slot in America. A narrative too cinematic to believe, an award-winning Warzone filmmaker. A doomsday prepper neighbor, a buried Jane Doe, and a videotape, still hidden, capable of destroying reputations from Seattle to Washington, D.C. The road to Cascade Hills was about to become a pipeline of reporters, federal agents, and grief, and Ethan Cole, whose camera had always been pointed at someone else's tragedy, was about to learn what it felt like to stand inside the frame. Cascade Hills, Washington, June 11, 1998, 9:31 a.m. The smell reached Detective Sergeant Caleb Rourke first: wet cedar, diesel exhaust, and that unmistakable copper-sweet undertone of recently exposed death. A half-dozen Snohomish County deputies were already stringing yellow tape across the logging spur that funneled into the abandoned quarry, their radios crackling over the drum of rain on slickers and cruiser roofs. Rourke parked his Crown Vic in the mud behind the medical examiner's van, killed the engine, and listened to the residual tick of hot manifold metal cooling in mountain air. A uniform jogged up. Bodies in the pit, sir. Single female, wrapped, partial decomp. Civilian first on scene is a local. Ethan Cole. He's waiting in my unit. The deputy's jaw twitched toward a cruiser where a lean man in a drenched Arcturus shell sat shivering, hands cupped around a thermos of coffee. Rourke nodded. Who called it in? Cole tried. No cell reception. He flagged down a passing truck. That driver used a payphone at Cunningham's Market. Name on the incident card is Warren Talbot. Rourke's pulse thumped. Same name from yesterday's anonymous tip. He zipped his parka to the throat and started downhill. The quarry was a black bowl slicked with rainwater. Off to one side, beneath a tilted sheet of rusted corrugated iron, a blue tarp cradled a human shape no larger than a high school cheerleader. The M.E., Dr. Hannah Leong, crouched by the remains, whispering measurements to a scribe who scribbled through a fogged visor. Morning, Caleb, she said without looking up. Female, late teens to early 20s. Entry wound to the occipital. Exit high orbital. No scavenger activity. She's been sealed in. Todd 3 to 5 days. No ID? None yet, but there's something you'll want to see. Leong lifted a corner of tarp, tucked beneath the victim's left elbow. Wrapped in clear contractor plastic was a Hi-8 videocassette. The plastic was doubly heat-sealed, labeled with a torn scrap of masking tape and 3 words in Sharpie. Keep safe, T2. Rourke exhaled. Chain that straight into evidence. I want a tech to duplicate before any eyeballs touch it. Leong covered the cassette. What's T2? Terminator sequel? Tape 2? Or Talbot? Version 2? Rourke muttered. He climbed back to the rim and slipped into the rear seat of Deputy Alvarez's cruiser. Ethan Cole's eyes were red-lined. His fingers drummed the styrofoam lid of the thermos. Mr. Cole, I'm Sergeant Rourke. You found the remains? Ethan's voice was hollow. Yes. Storm knocked out power. I heard a shot, went to see. Smelled fuel. Saw the foot. Why investigate alone? I work conflict zones. You see something wrong. You move. Phones were dead. Rourke studied him. Tell me about your relationship with Warren Talbot. No relationship. He owns the lot next door. But owns is a strong word. He wages war on vegetation. We've argued over noise, boundary stakes. Ethan swallowed. But last night I asked him for help. He drove off. Describe that interaction. Ethan replayed every line. Hand gesture. Headlight glint. Rourke took notes. Then asked, did you see a weapon in his vehicle? Not then. But he usually carries a .44 Bulldog in a hip holster when he's surveying. Rourke filed it away. Last question, for now. Have you been filming lately? Ethan frowned. You mean out here? Only landscape B-roll. Why? Because we found a videotape sealed beside the victim. Could be coincidence. Could be breadcrumb. Ethan's gaze sharpened. Whose tape? That's what we'll find out. Rourke opened the door. Stay available, Mr. Cole. No travel out of state without calling me. Ethan's laugh was a harsh exhale. Detective. Where would I go? Blank. Underscore. Blank. Seattle, June 11th, 7:18 p.m. The evidence lab inside SPD headquarters glowed sterile white, humming with AV equipment. Lieutenant Alma Reed, a 30-year veteran of narcotics turned tech forensics chief, loaded the Hi-8 into a Sony DEC patched to dual right block recorders. Rourke and Ada Janelle Hart stood behind the plexiglass partition, headsets on. Static. Then a handheld shot of pine trees at dusk. The camera jittered, zoomed, settled on a rough-hewn cabin, log walls, iron chimney, truck parked out front. Rourke recognized Ethan's rental in an instant. A timestamp stuttered at the bottom. The 6th of June 98, 19 hours 3 minutes and 12 seconds. A woman stepped into frame. Late teens, maybe 20, blunt-cut black hair, Washington Huskies sweatshirt 2 sizes too big. She looked into the lens, eyes wide and damp. A male voice behind camera. State your name for the record. She whispered, Marissa. Marissa Shue. Why are you here, Marissa? I answered an ad. Wanted work. Got scared. He said I was trespassing. But he locked the gate behind me. She inhaled, shaky. If you find this, please tell my sister Rachel I tried to come home. The screen lurched, footsteps. Frantic breathing, darkness, a squeal of packing tape. Then a single gunshot, horribly loud through the camera mic, followed by silence and the tape's digital snow. Lieutenant Reed stopped playback. 12 minutes of nothing after that. Camcorder left running under a tarp. Rourke's jaw flexed. Timestamp matches night before the storm. Victim's name is Marissa Shue. Missing person report filed in Tacoma 4 days ago. Talbot's ad? Ada Hart answered. Classifieds. He posts for temporary land clearing help. Cash. No background checks. Reed ejected the cassette, sealed it. We've got audio of his voice. We can match if we get a sample. Rourke's phone buzzed. Deputy Alvarez. Sarge. Just got the ballistic prelim. Projectile is .44 caliber hollow point consistent with Charter Arms Bulldog. Rourke closed his eyes. The pieces were falling like stones. Blank. Underscore. Blank. Cascade Hills, June 12th. 5:40 a.m. Talbot's parcel steamed under a weak sunrise. A task force convoy idled at the gate. 2 black Suburbans. A forensic van. Rourke's sedan. Deputy Alvarez unhooked bolt cutters from his belt. Rourke raised a hand. Wait. He approached the gatepost. Freshly screwed to the cedar rail was a laminated sheet bearing one typed line. Search the man with the camera. Truth is hiding in his reels. Below it, an SD card in a Ziploc, a gift. Rourke pocketed the card, signaled Alvarez, and the cutters bit through the chain. They found Talbot's motorcoach deserted. Generator warm. On the kitchenette table sat 2 cold cups of Folgers and a folded map of the Pacific Crest Trail marked with red X's, exit routes. In the rear bunk, the Bulldog lay in a foam case. 1 round missing. No Talbot. Blank. Underscore. Blank. Seattle, June 12th, 11:03 a.m. The SD card contained 6 still photos time-stamped over 3 months. High-res telephoto shots peering through Ethan Cole's cabin windows. Ethan editing at 3 a.m. Naomi kissing his neck. Ethan rolling a Pelican case labeled, Archive, Khmer. In one frame Ethan held a small pistol. A Czech CZ-82. Posing like a kid who just discovered his dad's gun safe. Rourke slid the photos across the interview table. Ethan blanched. He's been watching you, Rourke said. Why didn't you disclose you had a weapon? I don't have a weapon. That was a prop from a docu-reenactment in Phnom Penh. It's demilled, wrapped in resin. He must have filmed through my blinds. Rourke sighed. Talbot vanished at dawn, left these to muddy waters. He'll spin any narrative he can. You. Outsider Hollywood type with a gun. Feud gone lethal. Ethan's shoulders sagged. What do you want from me? Film everything. Your cameras are eyes we don't have. And if Talbot contacts you, keep him talking. Record. Date. Time. Meanwhile, we'll plaster his face from here to Boise. What about Marissa's family? We'll notify them after we put cuffs on the bastard. Rourke rose. Stay close, Mr. Cole. The mountain isn't finished with either of you. Blank. Underscore. Blank. Rainier Vista Motel, Yakima, June 13, 1:14 a.m. A flickering neon vacancy sign buzzed like hornets above room 12. Inside, Warren Talbot stripped off mud-stained jeans, tossed them into the shower, and stared at his reflection. The man in the mirror looked older than 57, bloodshot eyes, gray whiskers, weather-cracked lips, but beneath the exhaustion coiled an electric certainty: he was winning. They'd dig his land, comb the quarry, chase ghost trails. Meanwhile, the real insurance policy, Tape 1, rested inside a waterproof Pelican micro case buried under the stump of a lightning-blasted spruce 500 yards beyond Ethan's back porch. And taped to that case, for good measure, was Naomi Hernandez's university ID badge, lifted from her Subaru the day she forgot to lock up after grocery shopping in Issaquah. Weaponized truth. Let them scratch at each other like rats in a barrel. Talbot switched on the motel television. A local news anchor pivoted to breaking developments in the Cascade Hills quarry murder. His own mugshot filled the screen. He smirked, lifted the remote, and turned up the volume. The game, at last, was live streaming to every living room in America. He lay on the bedspread, hands folded behind his head, and began to dream of fire. Seattle, Washington, June 13, 1998, 9:27 a.m. The media storm hit like a bomb. By mid-morning, every major network had latched onto the narrative. Emmy-winning filmmaker caught in deadly land dispute. News vans lined up along Ridgecrest Lane. Helicopters circled like vultures, filming slow pans of Ethan Cole's cabin and the quarry crime scene. Cable pundits speculated on everything from land rights to mental illness to conspiracy. One tabloid ran with the headline, "Murder in the Pines, Hollywood versus the Prepper." At the heart of the chaos, Ethan sat motionless in Naomi's university office. The blinds were drawn, and the air smelled of printer toner and jasmine tea. He stared at the looping footage from the quarry tape, replaying the expression on Marissa Sue's face, her terrified gaze into the lens, her voice quivering with unspeakable vulnerability. Naomi stood across from him, arms crossed, watching with the practiced detachment of a scientist but the sorrow of someone who had held dead children's bones in her hands more times than she cared to count. She was someone's sister, Naomi said, someone's daughter. I can't stop hearing her voice. Ethan replied, his own cracking. I don't know what's worse, that she died like that or that no one came for her sooner. She came for you, Ethan, Naomi said quietly. That camera, that message. She believed you could expose what he was doing. Ethan shook his head. She thought I was already watching. But I wasn't. Naomi moved behind him and placed a hand on his shoulder. You are now. A knock startled them both. Rourke entered, his dark trench coat soaked from the rain, eyes bloodshot from too much coffee and too little sleep. We found tape 1, he said, blank, underscore, blank. Cascade Hills, June 13, 1998, 6:12 a.m., earlier that morning. Deputies and forensics teams had been combing Talbot's property for nearly 20 hours when one of the cadaver dogs, a German shepherd named Briscoe, barked and froze at the base of a lightning-blasted spruce just beyond the tree line near Ethan's cabin. At first, the stump seemed unremarkable, just a husk of wood and moss. But 5 inches under the roots, they found a Pelican 1120 microcase wrapped in a military poncho liner. Inside, 1 high-8 tape, 1 manila envelope, and a white laminated university ID card. The card belonged to Naomi. The envelope contained a single page typed in Courier New font. To whom it may concern. This is your insurance. Play it carefully. If you arrest me, the contents go to Channel 4 and 7 and the feds. I am not your monster. The mountain protects its own. W.T. Back in Seattle, Rourke played the recovered tape behind a secure steel door in SPD's video forensics unit. Present, Ethan, Naomi, Ada Hart, and Lieutenant Reed. The footage was grotesquely intimate. Talbot, breathing heavily, narrated the tape himself. He stood inside a converted shipping container, camera mounted to a fixed rig. Behind him, bound to a chair, sat a second young woman, later identified as Inez Delgado, 19, reported missing in Kent 6 months earlier. The tape was timestamped January 21, 1998, 1:14 a.m. Talbot paced slowly before the camera, monologuing in a voice far calmer than anyone expected. She didn't scream. That's how I knew she wasn't like the others. The ones from the city. They always scream. Inez understood the silence. She knew what it meant. The world doesn't care, so why should I? You people with your rules and roads and cameras, you don't protect anyone. I do. He crouched beside Inez, stroked her hair, then turned to the camera with dead eyes. I'm not a killer. I'm a corrector. Then the screen cut to static. The room was silent. Ethan leaned over the desk, knuckles white. He was practicing. He wasn't just hiding girls, he was building a theology around it. Naomi looked ill. That container wasn't on his main property. Did he move her? Rourke exhaled. That's what I need you to help me figure out. Blank. Underscore. Blank. Yakima, Washington, June 14, 1998, 3:02 a.m. Talbot had switched motels twice in 2 days. He used fake names and cash, something he'd likely done before. He ate gas station food, shaved with a camping mirror, and watched the coverage of his own manhunt with the glee of a child watching cartoons. The news wasn't calling him a serial killer. Not yet, but it would come. He scribbled notes on napkins, people he believed had betrayed the mountain. A former building inspector in Everett. A fish and wildlife officer who fined him for an illegal fence. A cable guy who spied on his blueprints. Ethan Cole was just the newest, loudest name. But Talbot wasn't just hiding anymore. He was hunting. He knew where Naomi taught. He knew where Ethan parked his car when visiting. He had one last lesson to teach. Blank. Underscore. Blank. University of Washington. DNA Research Wing, June 14, 12:18 p.m. Naomi's office buzzed with tension. She had agreed to let Rourke install a security system and had 2 plainclothes officers trailing her on campus. Still, when she returned from a meeting, she sensed something was off. Her window, usually latched, was cracked an inch. She froze, looked at her bookshelf. One title was missing. Forensic Genealogy. Tracing Unknown Lineages. A book she hadn't touched in weeks. Inside its spot, a folded note. Ethan's not the only one with secrets. You'll see, soon. W.T. Naomi called Rourke immediately. 10 minutes later, officers swept the office. No fingerprints, no signs of forced entry. But the message was clear. Talbot could get close. Too close. Blank. Underscore. Blank. SPD Headquarters, June 14, 5:41 p.m. Rourke briefed the task force inside a third-floor war room lined with mugshots. Case maps. Timelines. We're dealing with a classic malignant narcissist. He said, Talbot believes he's smarter than us, more righteous than us, and more native than anyone else in the region. He clicked a slide. Grainy satellite imagery of outbuildings north of the original property, structures not visible from the main drive. We missed this in the first sweep. But Naomi recognized the shipping container in tape 1. It's on the back 40 of a decommissioned logging camp Talbot surveyed in 1994. It was never cleared for construction, never legally owned, but he knew it was remote. Rourke pointed to the screen. That's where we go. Tomorrow. Pre-dawn. No press. No perimeter leaks. And God help us. Let's pray there aren't more girls buried out there. Blank. Underscore. Blank. Cascade National Forest, June 15, 1998, 4:42 a.m. 32 officers hiked silently through fog-slick timberland. Flashlights off. Radios on vibrate. As they neared the container, Briscoe barked. No one was prepared for what they found. Inside were 3 more bodies. Carefully wrapped, tagged with laminated cards bearing dates and initials. But near the far wall, on a cot, dehydrated but alive, lay Rachel Shue, Marissa's sister. She whispered one word as they cut her bindings. Trap. Then a tripwire snapped. The explosion rocked the hillside. And the real nightmare began. Cascade National Forest, June 15, 1998, 4:43 a.m. The detonation wasn't deafening, not the theatrical blast of a movie bomb, but a tight, sickening thump followed by a violent pressure wave and the sharp hiss of shrapnel slicing through pine. A deputy was thrown backward. Legs swept from beneath him. Someone screamed. Then silence again. A stunned, surreal silence broken only by the moans of the injured and the panicked bark of Briscoe the K9. Detective Caleb Rourke had been standing 10 feet outside the container's side entrance. The pressure from the tripwire blast knocked him to the ground, and the impact of a steel door bracket left a gash across his cheekbone. As he stumbled to his feet, disoriented and bleeding, his first thought wasn't for his own safety but for Rachel Shue, the girl they had just pulled from hell. "Medic," Rourke roared, his voice cracking over the radio. "We've got wounded, I repeat. Wounded. Rachel Shue is alive. Get in here, carefully. We may have additional traps." SWAT leader Troy Halberg was already coordinating containment. "Sweep the perimeter. No one moves without EOD clearing the area. I want every inch of this land mapped and marked." Inside the shipping container, 2 officers shielded Rachel with their own bodies. Her lips were cracked, her skin nearly translucent from dehydration. But she was conscious. Barely. As the medics lifted her onto a stretcher, she whispered something to Officer Juno Lopez, the youngest member of the task force. Juno leaned in. "What did you say, Rachel?" Rachel's breath rattled. "He said he was saving me. That I'd be the one to tell the truth. Then she passed out. Blank. Underscore. Blank. Seattle, June 15, 1998, 10:34 a.m. The city was already reeling from the morning's explosion by the time Ethan Cole appeared in the newsroom of KCTS Public Television. He had requested access to the master copies of his archived documentary footage from Distant Thunder and Children of Dust. His films from Southeast Asia and Northern Africa. His theory was unorthodox, but Ethan was beginning to suspect that Talbot had been watching his films not just to stalk him, but to emulate his structure. "Look," Ethan said, pulling up the cue sheet for Distant Thunder. "Every one of these tapes has a subject, a victim, a setting, a philosophy. Talbot's tapes follow the same rhythm. He didn't just kill, he produced. His murders were narratives." The station archivist, a woman named Mira Feldstein, frowned. "You're saying he mimicked your editing style? Not just the editing, the arc, the scripting, the use of voiceover and timestamp. He's making a documentary, a grotesque, inverted copy of what I do, using murder as the medium." Mira clicked her pen thoughtfully. "Do you think he's still filming?" Ethan nodded grimly. "If he's alive, he's still writing his story. And he hasn't filmed the ending yet. Blank. Underscore. Blank. Seattle Police Headquarters, 2:05 p.m. Rachel Shue had been airlifted to Harborview Medical Center and was now in guarded critical condition. Dr. Hannah Leong, the ME, confirmed the other 3 bodies found in the container were all female. Ages 18 to 22, each killed by a single bullet to the back of the skull. All had been missing for months. But it was what Rachel had said before she passed out that sent a chill through the task force. "He said I'd be the one to tell the truth." Lieutenant Reed brought it up first. "What truth? About what?" Rourke, who now sported a stitched-up gash and a bandaged hand, sat silently at the table until Ada Hart broke the silence. "We need to ask a question we've been avoiding. Is it possible Talbot isn't working alone?" The room went quiet. "Look," Hart continued, "Talbot is calculating, yes, but building a network of containers, surveillance, traps, and filming all of it? That takes time, resources, and technical skill. He's a geologist, he's not a cinematographer." Reed agreed. "What if someone's helping him produce this horror show?" Rourke finally spoke. "I think the person we need to worry about might not be someone new." They looked at him. He continued. "What if the co-producer is already part of the story? Someone we've overlooked?" He slid a folder across the table. It contained stills from the SD card Talbot had left behind, the ones of Ethan and Naomi, but now they were annotated. "Check the angle of these shots. The elevation. They're not from Talbot's house. They're from above Ethan's cabin." Lieutenant Reed narrowed her eyes. "You're saying Talbot had another camera nest?" Rourke nodded. "I think we need to go back to the mountain. Blank. Underscore. Blank. Cascade Hills, June 15, 1998, 6:22 p.m. Ethan and Rourke stood at the foot of a rocky ledge 200 yards above the cabin. With drone assistance and topo maps, they had pinpointed a potential site, an old hunting blind marked on a 1978 forestry chart. Long forgotten, it took an hour to scale the ridge. At the top, A collapsed wooden structure covered in pine needles. And beneath a sheet of bark and burlap, a reinforced camera mount still holding a trail cam. Batteries long dead, but inside a waterproof case nearby, they found a notebook. Rourke opened it. Inside, meticulous records, timestamps, weather conditions, names. Naomi watering basil 10:12 a.m. Ethan walking shirtless 3:22 p.m. Naomi crying on porch, night before Emmy taping. Then, one entry written in red ink. DNA doesn't lie. Her past is what binds her to me. He has no idea who she really is. Ethan's throat went dry. What the hell does that mean? Rourke shook his head. We need to ask Naomi. Blank. Underscore. Blank. Seattle, June 15, 1998, 10:01 p.m. Naomi sat across from them in SPD's interview room, staring at the page Rourke had pulled from the notebook. This isn't possible, she whispered. He couldn't know. Know what? Rourke asked gently. Naomi inhaled slowly. When I was in grad school, I worked for a team that helped identify remains from mass graves in Argentina. One of the victims we recovered was linked by mitochondrial DNA to a man named Victor Talbot, Warren's cousin. The man had been executed during the military junta. His family blamed the U.S. government, blamed American scientists, for manipulating the findings. Rourke's eyes widened. And you were the lead geneticist on that case. I thought it was ancient history. Naomi said, but if Warren had access to forensic databases, and he was tracking old DNA matches. Ethan slumped back in his chair. You're not just a target. You're part of his origin story. Blank. Underscore. Blank. Interstate 90, eastbound, June 16, 1998, 2:45 a.m. Warren Talbot drove in silence, a smile flickering across his lips every time headlights passed. In the seat beside him, a new high-8 camcorder hummed quietly, its lens focused on the passenger seat, empty. For now. In the back of the truck, a taped-up crate marked, ACT-3, The Reckoning. Talbot muttered to himself as he drove. They made me, but they don't know the ending yet. Ethan thinks he's the author. Naomi thinks she's the victim. But I'm the editor. I get final cut. He laughed, soft and low. And we're almost there. Interstate 90, Snoqualmie Pass, June 16, 1998, 3:57 a.m. Black ice still clung to the high pass even in June, and the twin beams of Warren Talbot's F-250 wandered drunkenly across the lane markers as the truck climbed toward the summit. In the bed, the crate stamped ACT-3, The Reckoning bumped against ratchet straps. Every thud a metronome for the words Talbot kept whispering under his breath. Cold open, rising action, redemptive blood. He rehearsed the sequence like scripture. When the CB scanner on the dash crackled with a weather advisory, he shut it off. Content to navigate by muscle memory and the roadmap playing behind his eyes. 2 more hours east lay an abandoned mining town called Silver Star Junction, shuttered in '72 after mercury contamination poisoned its creek and its economy in the same season. No phones, no power, one ranger station that hadn't seen a salaried employee in 15 years. Perfect stage, perfect acoustics. Blank. Underscore. Blank. Harborview Medical Center, Seattle, June 16, 5:13 a.m. Rachel Shue came out of surgery with 46 stitches and enough ketamine in her system to knock out a linebacker. But the first thing she asked for when her eyes fluttered open was Detective Rourke. He arrived in the ICU still wearing last night's dress shirt. Blood and pine pitch crusted in the elbow creases. Nurse Kwan warned him he had 5 minutes. He took 2. Rachel's voice was ragged. He talked about a place. Said the mountain keeps its secrets east of the divide. Her eyelids drooped, then snapped open again in panic. He has another box out there. Bigger than the others. He called it his vault of reverence. East of the divide where? Rourke asked. Where no phones ring and the creek runs red. He made me memorize it. A tear leaked down her temple. He said if I told the wrong people, the vault would never open, and the souls inside would stay voiceless forever. Rourke felt his pulse bang against his bandage. Red Creek, mercury mine runoff, was notoriously rust-colored. Silver Star Junction. He squeezed Rachel's hand. You just helped the right people. Blank. Underscore. Blank. SPD War Room, 7:04 a.m. Satellite photos of Silver Star Junction now filled the corkboards. 4 collapsed bunkhouses. A dynamited ventilation shaft. A corrugated steel processing mill at the edge of Copperwolf Creek, water-tinted brick red from decades of heavy metal sludge. FBI SAC Denise Caldwell, flown up overnight from Portland, addressed the Joint Task Force. Talbot's POS truck was tagged by WSDOT cameras at Roslyn and again 2 minutes later heading east. Only one viable exit before the Ellensburg Loop, Old Silver Star Service Road. That lands him here. She tapped a quivering laser dot on the mill. Rourke, eyes rimmed with exhaustion, broke in. He isn't just bunkering, he's staging a finale. There may be living hostages inside a structure rigged with traps. Assume wired explosives. He worked with Enfo in the oil fields. Caldwell nodded, which is why FBI HRT will breach. SPD will perimeter. And Mr. Cole, she looked sharply at Ethan, will stay behind the command line. Ethan's jaw tensed. He'll radio me. He's filming an ending with my name on it. Then we'll take the call together. Caldwell said, no cowboy moves. Naomi sat in the corner, eyes swollen from a night of debriefs and revelations. She hadn't spoken since telling Rourke about Victor Talbot's exhumed remains. But now she cleared her throat. Talbot believes he's correcting historic injustice, she said, voice barely above a whisper. He feels seen when a lens is pointed at him. If Ethan doesn't engage, he may execute whoever's left just to force our hand. Silence. Then Caldwell's stoic facade cracked. Just a hair. All right, Mr. Cole. You ride in the 2nd MRAP with a live uplink and 2 armed escorts. You do nothing until I say. Ethan met Naomi's eyes. Neither blinked. Blank. Blank. Old Blewett Way Station. US 97, Spur, June 16, 10:26 a.m. 2 mine-resistant ambush-protected vehicles, 8 FBI Suburbans, and 4 SPD cruisers idled beneath a canopy of weather-beaten fur. The mountain air tasted of wet rust and diesel. Ethan sat in the rear of the 2nd MRAP. Kevlar vest hanging loose, headset wire running to a mobile satellite dish magnet clamped to the roof. The comms tech handed him a receiver. If he calls, line 3 lights red, press once to answer, once to mute, feed auto records to bunker server. Ethan turned the receiver over in his hands. Plastic, electronics, so trivial, given the blood already spilled. The convoy rolled. 15 minutes later dust plumes curled behind the lead vehicle as the old service road narrowed to single-lane ruts. The skeletal frame of Silver Star Junction emerged. Busted clapboard siding, conveyor belts frozen mid-swallow, and the gaping mouth of the mill stretching toward a sky bruised violet by gathering storm clouds. The column halted. HRT troopers in matte black body armor dismounted, forming L Overwatch positions. Caldwell's command post unfolded from a cargo truck, dishes tilting skyward. Line 3 lit red. Ethan's stomach lurched. He pressed. Talbot's voice oozed through static, calm as a bedtime story narrator. Ethan, you finally brought the cavalry. I hope they're camera ready. Act 3 is a live performance. Ethan steadied his breath. Warren, it's over. We've found the girls. Found your tapes. Step out, hands up, and no one else gets hurt. A soft chuckle. You think I fear closure? Closure is a lie producers tell audiences when the runtime's up. Reality breathes. Ethan, it doesn't fade to black. What do you want? Same as I always have. Recognition of the wound beneath your civilization's pretty bandage, and accountability from the scientist who falsified my family's justice. Naomi flinched beside Caldwell's shoulder. Talbot continued, she'll walk that bridge to me. Alone, carrying the crate from my truck. You'll film. No edits. One continuous shot, verite style. After that, the vault opens, and the lost ones speak. Refuse. And the creek runs red with fresh pigment. Caldwell leaned toward the mic. Ethan muted the handset. She whispered, he doesn't know we seized the crate. Ethan whispered back, he might suspect, but he needs the spectacle. Caldwell keyed her radio. HRT Alpha. Confirm visual on subject? Sniper Overwatch came back. Negative. Thermal shows no movement main structure. Likely lower levels. Caldwell's teeth ground. He's burrowed. Ethan unmuted. Warren, Naomi's here, but she's not your pawn. Let's trade stories instead, you and me, on camera, man to man. A hiss of disappointment. You still don't listen. She is the hinge. Bring her. 10 minutes. The line clicked dead. Caldwell snapped to her operators. No contact until EOD sweeps. Naomi does not go inside. Naomi stepped forward. If I don't, he kills whoever is left. We breach before that. Ethan spoke quickly. He said one continuous shot. We can give him the illusion. Send me with a body cam streaming to command. Naomi stays 50 yards back in visual range. Warren sees a silhouette, not proximity. Caldwell weighed it. Time. 9 hours 48 minutes and 20 seconds on her wrist chrono. 9 minutes left. Alpha team. Prep flashbulbs and fiber optic cams. Cole goes to the threshold only. Mike hot. If Talbot exposes himself. Green light for non-lethal. To Naomi she added. Softer. Stay behind the MRAP wheelhouse. If he fires, you drop. Naomi's eyes shimmered but she nodded. Blank. Blank. Silver Star Processing Mill, 10 a.m. The mill loomed like a rotting cathedral. Corrugated panels creaked in the wind, broken windows grinned jagged smiles. Ethan's body cam broadcast a jittery pov as he crossed the sagging catwalk over Copperwolf Creek. Water below churning blood red from iron oxide. Storm clouds growled overhead. 5 meters from door, he whispered. Copy. Caldwell's voice crackled in his earpiece. Hold position. A squeal of hinges. The main bay door rolled upward on its ancient track, revealing blackness inside, and a single halogen work lamp that snapped on, creating a tunnel of harsh white. In that cone of light stood Warren Talbot, unarmed, palms forward, parka dusted with mercury-colored grime. His eyes, bottomless and bright, fixed on Ethan as though nothing else existed. Welcome to the vault, he said, voice echoing through steel ribs. Ethan kept the camera trained. You said you'd release them. Talbot nodded toward the darkness behind him. They've always been free. Their voices were trapped in nitrate stock and bureaucratic silence. Today we screen the director's cut. He lifted a remote trigger, no bigger than a car fob, between thumb and forefinger. Come inside, Ethan. Let history roll. Caldwell's command echo hissed. Do not enter. Alpha moving. But before Ethan could step or Alpha could breach, lightning cracked across the valley, and every floodlight inside the mill roared to life. Hundreds of translucent film strips hung from the rafters like macabre streamers, spliced home movie prints. Talbot's victim tapes, and Ethan's own archival footage stolen frame by frame. Each strip was threaded through a line of thermite cord. Talbot grinned. Cinema burns brightest at ignition. His thumb pressed the trigger. Time fragmented. Ethan dove sideways. Alpha team exploded through a side panel. Talbot ducked behind a conveyor chute. In an instant, thermite hissed white hot, liquid fire racing up the silver ribbons overhead. The vault was a furnace. Ethan crawled toward the motionless form of a boy, no more than 12, shackled beneath the main conveyor. Eyes open, dazed but alive, the shackles were welded to a channel strut. No key in sight. Sparks rained molten steel. Alpha, I've got a live miner at my mark, he yelled. Outside, Naomi watched orange fire blossom through broken windows. She broke cover, sprinting before anyone could stop her. Caldwell roared. Hernandez, back, Alpha, intercept. But Naomi was already across the catwalk, smoke curling around her lab coat. She vanished into the blaze. Blank. Blank. Inside the mill. 10:02 a.m. Ethan's vest smoldered as he fought to haul the boy away from falling sparks. The cuffs wouldn't budge. Talbot's silhouette appeared atop the conveyor scaffold, pistol in hand, eyes flicking between Ethan and Naomi, who now stood in the doorway coughing through her sleeve. Kind doctor, Talbot called over the roar. You can still balance the equation. Trade your life for the boys and the filmmakers. Blood for blood, science for art. Naomi squared her shoulders. Let the child go. Warren, I'm the one you want. Talbot's grin trembled with manic delight. Yes, step forward. Ethan shouted. Naomi, no, but she ignored him, moving through the curtain of heat until she and Warren stood 10 feet apart on the graded catwalk above the furnace. Below, Alpha foothooks clanged as operators climbed. Caldwell's voice stabbed Ethan's ear. I have no shot. Backdrop is combustibles. Ethan looked at the shackles. Then at an abandoned cutting torch half buried in slag. Fuel cylinder attached. He flicked the valves, thumbed the striker. Blue flame roared to life. Metal shrieked as he sliced through the chain. The boy sagged into his arms, sobbing. On the catwalk, Talbot raised the pistol but did not fire. Confession first, he said to Naomi, eyes glassy with tears of fury and vindication. Tell the world you doctored Victor's DNA so the regime could bury it. Say it, and Ethan walks free. Naomi's voice was steady. The DNA proved Victor was murdered by state police. It convicted them. Your family's letters thanked me. Talbot's hand shook. Lies. The thermite above hissed louder, raining sparks onto his shoulders. His parka caught fire at the hem. He seemed not to feel it. Naomi stepped closer. Warren, it wasn't injustice that broke you. It was grief and isolation. Let the boy live. Let Ethan live. You can still end this. For a heartbeat he faltered, tears mixing with sweat. Then a gunshot cracked. Naomi jerked, but Talbot had aimed upward, shooting the catwalk cable. The platform lurched. Naomi slipped, clinging to a railing now dangling over 40 feet of open flame. Talbot leaned over. Choices, he whispered. A burst of automatic fire thudded. ALPHA-3, perched on a crossbeam, unleashed a 40mm sponge round. It struck Talbot square in the sternum. He staggered. The pistol clattered below. Another sponge round dropped him to his knees. Ethan sprinted with the boy toward the exit. Naomi dangled, feet kicking over fire. Talbot crawled toward her, hand outstretched as though to pull her down with him. Ethan shoved the boy into Alpha 2's arms and leapt onto the tilted catwalk. Grabbing Naomi's wrists, metal groaned, rivets popped. Alpha 3 shouted, bridge going. With one desperate heave, Ethan yanked Naomi onto the deck plate. Talbot's fingers grazed her ankle but slipped. The flaming catwalk bolt sheared, and Warren Talbot plunged into the inferno, his scream drowned by the roar of thermite in the collapsing roof. Alpha hauled Ethan and Naomi onto the loader ramp as the mill imploded behind them. Fireball punching through the skylights into the gray morning. Outside, Caldwell caught Naomi in a bear hug that skirted protocol. Medics steadied Ethan, whose face was streaked with soot and streaked tears. In the chaos, no one noticed the charred remote trigger that slid from Talbot's pocket onto a pile of smoldering debris. Its tiny red LED still blinked, once every 9 seconds, searching for a lost signal. Blank. Underscore. Blank. Command tent. Perimeter. 12:48 p.m. Rourke peeled off latex gloves. Throat raw from smoke. ME confirms 2 additional miners alive in a sub-basement cage. Total survivors. 3. Fatalities. 4, including Talbot. Caldwell exhaled. And the vault? Destroyed. Tapes melted into slag. Ethan stared at the smoking husk through the tent flap. Maybe that's mercy. Naomi, IV in her arm, shook her head. Stories don't end. They echo. She reached for Ethan's hand. Let's be the ones who carry the echo properly. Rourke's radio crackled. Base. This is Drone 1. We've located an underground chamber 200 yards west. Thermal shows no heat but heavy metallic mass. Recommend EOD. Caldwell frowned. He had a secondary vault? Ethan met her gaze, dread curdling anew. Talbot's final cut might still be unreleased. Outside, thunder rumbled. Or was it something else? Shifting beneath poisoned soil? Fade to black. Cascade National Forest, June 16, 1998, 2:16 p.m. The rain returned just as FBI Drone 1 guided boots toward the western treeline, where the earth swelled in unnatural ridges above a forgotten glacial basin. What they found, buried beneath pine needles and decomposed timber, was a steel hatch riveted into concrete, a sealed sub-chamber, obscured by time and intent. The EOD team moved with reverent precision. No wires, no pressure plates, just a biometric scanner, scorched by time but still intact. Someone had rigged it to deny access to anyone but Warren Talbot. Inside the command tent, Special Agent Caldwell turned to Ethan Cole. You want to finish what he started? Ethan hesitated. Finish what he started, she clarified. He didn't trust the state. He trusted you. The message wasn't meant for police. He built this, as a postscript. Naomi spoke from the cot behind them, her voice hoarse. A director's commentary. Caldwell nodded to the techs. Override the scanner. Cut it clean. 20 minutes later the hatch opened with a hiss of decompressed air. A stairwell yawned beneath, the concrete walls lit by LED strips that still hummed with battery reserve power. At the bottom, a single steel vault door. Behind it, they found a room that wasn't just engineered. It was curated. Blank. Blank. The vault, June 16, 1998, 3:12 p.m. The inner chamber looked nothing like the makeshift shipping container, vaults. This was a climate-controlled archive, chilled air, insulated walls, dry racks containing dozens of plastic evidence tubs, each labeled, numbered, cross-indexed in a binder that lay on a steel podium like a Bible. There were 36 total tubs. Each contained a single sealed evidence bag, HI-8 tapes, VHS cassettes, and microfilm reels. A hand-scrawled note was taped inside the lid of the first bin. This is not revenge, it is continuity. Art is not destruction, it is resurrection. These voices were stolen. I've simply returned their microphones. WT. The room was wired for AV playback. The FBI's AV tech, a soft-spoken analyst named Lucas, inserted tape 001 into the deck and patched it to a monitor. No countdown, no calibration, just footage, blank. Playback. Tape 001. Timestamp. The 11th of May 95. Location. Unincorporated Columbia County, Washington. A girl, no more than 14, walks through a field. Her hair tangled with clover. Her jacket flapping in spring wind. The camera work is amateur but patient. Her name is Amy R., according to a whiteboard title card flashed for 2 seconds. There's no violence, no screaming, just a recorded confession from her. She details grooming by a youth pastor, the threats, the silence from her family. She stares into the lens, glassy-eyed, and whispers, "He said no one would believe me, but this is proof." Then she holds up a journal, the same one recovered in Spokane after her suicide the following year. Blank. Back in the vault. Tape 002, then 003, then 004. Every tape follows the same format: a girl, a lens, a confession. All before they vanished. All before they were labeled as runaways or delinquents. They were testimonies, pre-mortem evidence. Naomi's hand covered her mouth. These girls, he recorded them before anything happened to them. He found the discarded, the disbelieved, and then kept them frozen here. Caldwell whispered. He thought he was giving them a voice. Rourke added bitterly, after silencing them himself. Tape 009 featured Inez Delgado, the girl from Tape 1. She stared into the lens and said, "If I go missing, it was Mr. Talbot, the guy who gave me the ride from the Greyhound. He said I could clear brush for cash, but he never let me leave." She looked into the camera. "This isn't a suicide. This isn't a runaway. I want someone to see me." And now, finally, they had. Seattle, June 17, 1998, 9:43 a.m. The footage, encrypted, digitized, and watermarked, was handed to federal prosecutors, forensic psychiatrists, and trauma units. Over the next 72 hours, 5 previously unsolved missing teen cases were reopened with new evidence. Families were contacted, coroners re-evaluated accidental, drownings, and undetermined deaths. Ethan Cole stood before a live press conference on Capitol Hill, flanked by Naomi and Agent Caldwell. He wore the same jacket he'd worn the night of the Emmys, though the lapel pin was now scorched from the mill fire. He looked into the cameras and said, "This isn't a story about a killer. It's a story about how we fail to listen until it's too late." Talbot thought he was preserving truth, but truth without mercy is just a weapon. These girls deserve more than a footnote. They deserve to be heard. So we're making sure their voices go global. He then announced the founding of the SHU Initiative, a foundation named for Marissa and Rachel, to provide emergency housing, trauma documentation kits, and secure testimonial video access to vulnerable youth across the U.S. Private Memorial, June 20, 1998. The final survivors, 3 children rescued from the final mill, stood with Naomi and Ethan beneath a row of redwood trees in Olympia National Park. Rachel Shue, now recovering, read a poem her sister had written in foster care. A simple 4-line verse. The world can bruise but not erase. A single voice can shake the walls. You call me ghost, I say my name, and still it echoes through the halls. Blank. Underscore. Blank. Final scene, July 1st. 1998. In a quiet editing suite in Portland, Ethan inserted the final high-8 tape into a deck. He let it roll for 30 seconds. Static. Blackness. Then, an image. It was Warren Talbot, sitting before his own camera. No bravado. No speech. He said nothing. He just looked into the lens. And after 30 seconds, he blinked once, and whispered, "Cut." Then the tape ended. And so did the story. Or at least, the part Warren wrote. Blank. Underscore. Blank. Epilogue. The remaining vault tapes, now known as the Silver Star Reels, were released to law enforcement and forensic agencies across the country. By the end of 1998, 18 new missing persons cases had been reopened, 7 wrongful runaways had been cleared, and 11 families found answers they never thought would come. The fire that consumed the mill also consumed the myth of Warren Talbot as a lone madman. In his place, what remained was a mirror held up to a nation, a warning about forgotten children, broken systems, and the seduction of narrative control. But it also left something else, something Ethan Cole refused to let burn. A way to finally tell the truth. Unedited. The Cut That Matters. Los Angeles, California, September 19, 1999 to 7:41 p.m. The crowd at the 51st Primetime Emmy Awards rose in a rare standing ovation, not for an actor, not for a sitcom, but for a 58-minute investigative documentary titled Silent Frames: The Voices of Silver Star. The screen behind the stage displayed the final freeze frame from the film, a still image of Rachel Shue, looking directly into the lens, holding her sister's journal. On stage, Ethan Cole stood beside Naomi Hernandez and agent Denise Caldwell. The trio had walked the deepest trench of horror together, and now stood as guardians of voices once lost to dust and fire. Ethan adjusted his tie, the same one he wore in Cambodia 10 years ago, and leaned toward the microphone. This isn't our award. It belongs to those who spoke with nothing but courage and pain. It belongs to the girls who whispered into cameras, thinking no one would ever hit play. But someone did, and now the whole world is listening. Blank. Underscore. Blank. The Archive Room, National Center for Exploited and Missing Children. Alexandria, Virginia, November 3, 1999. A digital replica of the Silver Star Reels had been housed here for 6 months under 24-hour federal protection. A biometric log showed that researchers, psychologists, and law enforcement accessed the footage daily. The youngest victim captured on the reels had been 11. The oldest, 21. Inside one secure subfolder labeled Unidentified, Audio Only, analysts had begun decoding a series of damaged voice-only tapes. One caught particular attention. A voice, soft, uncertain, said, "If anyone's listening, I'm not sure what town I'm in. I think it's called Trenton Junction, or something like that." He said this wasn't the first vault. He said there are others, in the south, in the desert. He said he has helpers. The tape ended with coughing. Then static. That discovery sent a ripple through the bureau. Blank. Underscore. Blank. Quantico, Virginia, December 1st, 1999. The FBI's Behavioral Analysis Unit held a closed-door meeting with key members of the Silver Star Task Force, including Caldwell and Rourke. The tape from the audio-only bin had been voice-matched to a missing girl from Odessa, Texas, presumed deceased in 1994. She had never been connected to Talbot. And yet, the voice confirmed something no one wanted to believe. He hadn't acted alone. Caldwell closed the file, removed her glasses, and said quietly, "The vaults may have burned, but the network might still be alive." Blank. Underscore. Blank. Seattle, Washington, January 2, 2000. Naomi woke in the early hours to the sound of the front door closing softly. Ethan wasn't in bed. She stepped into the living room and found him sitting on the floor. Surrounded by folders, timelines, and maps, the raw materials of obsession. The glow from the laptop cast deep shadows across his face. "You're chasing ghosts again," she whispered. Ethan didn't look up. "Not ghosts," he said. "Threads. Someone helped him. Maybe more than one. That voice on the Odessa tape? I found 3 other missing girls from towns within 50 miles of desert junctions. All vanished between 1991 and 1995. All marked as runaways. All with similar surnames. All with V surnames. Someone's curating." Naomi stepped closer, knelt beside him. "You could stop. You know. You saved lives. You told their stories." Ethan looked at her, eyes exhausted but clear. "No. I opened the story. Blank. Blank. Dallas, Texas, February 17, 2000 to 3:17 p.m. A package arrived at a university archive in Plano, Texas. It bore no return address. Inside, one high-8 cassette, a note, and a zip drive. The handwriting matched Warren Talbot's. The note read, "The others hid in plain sight. They took the formula and made their own edits. You wanted the director's cut. But now, the sequel's in motion." On the zip drive, GPS coordinates in Arizona. On the tape, another girl. Not one from the Silver Star reels. A new one. Blank. Blank. Final scene. Echo chamber, future documentary, 2001 teaser. Black screen. Sound of breath. Then a girl's voice. "This is for whoever comes next. If you're seeing this, it's already started again. Find the ones with cameras. And don't stop filming. Blank. Blank." Closing title card. The vaults of Silver Star remain the largest forensic discovery of testimonial evidence related to premeditated serial crime in U.S. history. At least 27 families were reunited with truth. 3 children were rescued alive. 4 federal task forces remain open as of 2000. The full contents of the Silver Star tapes remain classified, but parts have been made available to advocacy groups, law enforcement agencies, and educational institutions to train future crisis responders. The case remains open.